everyone. Welcome today to our Agility Design Studio second session, Building Grid Components. Today, we are going to take a look at the Agility Design Studio. We're going to look at components and our transactions, and we are going to learn how to build a simple grid, and then we're going to turn around and build a process grid. So Design Studio has many components, but we're going to start out with those two types of components, and we are going to show you how to use some transactions to manage your Macola table data, and then also to be able to import data into your Macola system. So first off, for a couple of housekeeping things, at the end here, if you look in your chat window for your webinar, we do have a section down there for questions. If you have some questions as we go along and you think of some, please just go on ahead and type your questions in there. We won't be able to answer them till we get to the end, but when we get to the end, we'll go through those questions and take a look at them. Also, this is being recorded, so we will send out the recording at the end of this session to everyone here. And then also, if you would like, at the very end, I will have my email address. It's krussell@wisys.com, but it will be displayed at the end also. And you can go on ahead and send me an email and let me know you would like a copy of the sample projects that we're doing today, and also a copy maybe of the Excel sheets that we're using to import, for you to have a look at them and kind of take a look and maybe design them to fit you, or just kind of peer into them and see what's going on. So with that, let's go on ahead and let's get started here. And as I said today, in Design Studio, we have many different components. We'll take a look at those components, and today we're going to build a grid and a process grid. As we're doing that, we're going to utilize some of the business transactions. So we'll take a look at what are those business transactions, what's out there, how do you see what's out there, and how do you utilize those business transactions. Knowing that those two things are out there, we're then going to build a very simple grid and use that for a lookup to show you, number one, how to create a grid, but how to also maybe use that grid for a search if you need to versus just viewing data. And then we're going to build an update for an order table, an item master table, and then we're going to build an order import and an item import. So these are some of the Design Studio components. We looked at these when we did our intro lessons, so that is also out on YouTube. If you missed the first session, the intro one of how to get started, how to find them in Agility Explorer, because basically we designed all of our products using Design Studio here. So what you see in Design Studio is the tools that we also use to create the user interface that you have for the WiSys Agility Explorer product that you use today. And it's used for Agility Web Explorer, and it's also what will be used for the business analytics that are coming out in 567. So here's a list of some of the components that we have, and we'll take a look at two. So let's take a look. We've got a lot to cover, and we will go through those, and let's get started. So I've got my virtual environment here with 566 on it, and I am going to open up a session of Design Studio. And this is where I'm going to get started. And with Design Studio, it's going to bring up a list of all the last used projects, and then also a list of all projects. They always start with default by WiSys security. If they're your projects, they will be at an administrator security level. So you would have to turn this off to be able to see your projects. What I want to do is create a brand new project. So I am simply going to click New Project, and I am going to call this the Learning Lab, Creating Grids. And I'm going to set this, if this were a web project and I was designing this for Agility Web Explorer, I would check that. We're not designing for Agility Web Explorer today. My security level for you, it defaults to WiSys Developer, but for you, it will default to Administrator. And I am going to change that to the administrator here, because when I send the sample out to you, that way you'll be able to do some modifications and adjust as you wish. I'm going to click OK. And it is going to open up the Agility Design Studio, the blank grid, where we get started from the very beginning here. If I look up here across my ribbon bar, now this is 566. 565 and earlier has the same thing. The bars up at the top, or the menu bars, are a little bit different, but it's all here and it's all the same stuff. So you would see that there is a new component at the top on the menu bar, and I'm going to choose no component. And this is the list of all the different types of components that you can build with Agility Design Studio to be presented and used in the Agility Explore web products. So today, of course, a lot of the things you see are grids and process grids. We've seen graphs, we use dialogues, we use basically all of these here. When you want to get into the advanced stuff, you can, build your own data queries for special validations or your own SQL scripts. You can use stored procedures, object transactions, and we have some summary pages, and we do have the Outlook add-in. Right now, we're going to start with a grid, and we're going to build a very simple grid. And with this simple grid, I am just going to call this, and I am product category. And this is just going to be a product category view. And I'm going to put the word search after this just for fun. Now, if this were something that I was going to display on my menu, you'll notice over here on the left side that this is the menu that is displayed in Agility Explorer. So I have all the same folders, and underneath are all the standard products that you see and have available as an administrator, and potentially if you've allowed your users, this is the menu to see. Once I build my products, I can simply drag them over to my menu area, and this is where it will display and then be available for me to grant security rights to the users here. If I'm going to put that on my menu, I have the ability to put a picture. So you can see there's a lot of pictures here, and I can simply hit my arrow here, and we have a lot of canned icons here, so you can pick one. I'm not going to put this on a menu, so I'm not going to attach a picture, but I could. And I would just select that picture and say, okay. I can browse out if I have my own logos or my own icons out there. I can browse and I can use stuff that's not in the standard product and have that too. I'm going to click OK. And the first thing it's going to start presenting me with is a series of screens that are going to ask me how to set up this grid. So the very first one is my settings grid. Now, the settings grid is going to change based upon the type of component that you are using and building. So you will get different options and different questions and setup based upon the component that you're using. So for instance, here I can see under my standard grid, I have some basic filter options. Do I want a top filter? Do I want to hide the column filter row, which doesn't allow users to filter? I have some appearance questions, such as do I want a minimal display, which is if I link this, it will hide. Do I want a large font? How do I want this to behave? So how do I want it to sort? Do I want to auto expand groups if I'm going to put a group in there, or I allow my users to put groups in there? And then I have my style. I have refresh options. So maybe this is something that needs to refresh every single 5 minutes or however long here. Generally a main grid, unless it's just a view and you want it to refresh, you can actually refresh after you're doing a transaction versus just the grid in general or the component. I can put a banner across the top. I can identify item codes, and I have some debug options here where I can bypass some SQL. So I have some general settings. This is going to be just a very basic grid, so I'm not going to change anything else here. I'm going to click Next. And what it's going to take me into is the next step of setting up my grid here. You'll notice too at the top, and you'll notice in 565 and before, like I said, it looks a little bit different, but you'll have these steps at the top. And as I keep putting next in, it's going to walk me through every one of these steps. And so if once I'm familiar with this and I'm going to edit it, or I know exactly what I'm doing, I don't have to use my next button. I can just come up here and select the icon up here for whatever it is I'm trying to do. So SQL statement. The SQL statement is, what do I want to present in this component? This is a grid. What do I want to display in this component here? This I'm going to make a very simple product category view. So I can do a couple of things. I can type my SQL in right down here. I can also look over here to the right where I can see, click here to see the table list. I'm going to click on this table list, and this is going to display a list of all of my SQL tables and views that are available in the database that I am in right down here. Now that looks a little different in 565, but you can see the company at the bottom. And if I went and looked in the SQL Server Management Studio, I would see the same table and views for this company as I'm seeing right here. So this is a list of all of my Macola tables that are in this particular database that I'm working with. I can either browse and find the table I'm looking for. So I'm going to create a simple grid looking at my IAM category code and my description. I can browse and find it. I can click in here, and I happen to know the table name is IAM cat. And the more I type, the more I find. Once I have it, I can drag and drop it over here, or I can double click and it will bring that table over here. So it's real similar to something like when you're designing Crystal, or if you've used, the SQL environment in the Design Studio where you can, add the tables, drag them. If I have multiple tables, I can drag and drop my links just like I can in Crystal or in the Management Studio. And you'll notice as I do that, it's going to build my SQL down here at the bottom. Now, if I'm typing it, I can, once I type it, I can click Format SQL. This instance isn't going to do anything for me. And it would read everything, and it's going to reformat it and make sure I have everything typed like I should. I, as a designer, will often go into the SQL Server Management Studio and go into Query Builder, type my SQL there, get it all tweaked up just like I want it, and then simply cut and paste it into here. And then I know it's going to pull exactly what I want from SQL, but I can also just build it straight in here. I can check this box that says Show the SQL Expression Builder, which here, if I'm doing, specific fields here, so if I want just the product category and I want just the category description, you'll see it changed right down here. And you'll also see it built it into my expression builder. I can give it an alias, I can give it an attribute, I can put criteria on it, and I can do it straight in here or type it in down here. Once I have all of this built, if I would like to see the data values, I can click on my data tab up here at the top, and that will show me the query that I'm asking for. Now, this is the query that I'm building to use in the grids or in the component that I'm building. So whatever I might need in this particular application, I need to make sure I have included that SQL in here. And by all means, if you have any questions on the SQL tables or anything like that, feel free to shoot us an email, and we will help answer any questions that we can there. Once I have my SQL built, I'm going to click Next. And you'll notice here it took me to the next section of filter columns. And also it moved me to the next filter fields here. This is where I can select fields over here, and I can build columns to build filters to do lookups on filters. And you see those in a lot of different applications when you're in Agility Explorer. I don't have any that I want to build in this instance, so I'm going to click Next. And this is where I'm going to add buttons. So if I need to do something, maybe I want to link to another grid. Maybe I want to, display a hyperlink. I want to view the order dialog or something like that. I can add buttons. We'll do that in the next session here. And I don't need any here, so I'm going to click Next. If I needed an alert to, if I'm looking at orders and I don't have enough quantity, I can build an alert here, and I'll show you that in a later grid here. So I'm going to click Next, and the detail link is to when you see something like the order status, and I have the order header up above, and I see all the lines below. That is done with a detailed link here, and I simply come in here and link that detailed grid to that by linking the index fields. And so when I pick this order, it knows the line items to show, and that makes that presentation. So I'm going to click OK. That's really all I need for this very simple grid. This can be used on any SQL table, whether it's in a Macola table, when it's in an outside table, doesn't really matter. Anything you can pull into SQL, you could use here in Agility Explorer. So I have built my IM product category, and I can see that it is a type of a grid, and I can see the description. If I want to take a look at that here, there's a couple ways I can do that. So I can highlight it, and I can choose preview, and it's going to show me what it looks like. Now, when I'm in here, we took a look previously that I can rearrange my columns. So I'm going to make this pretty, and then I can go into my display here, and I have the ability to choose format and mass format. And this is just a bunch of defaults that we have set that says if this is the name, change it to this. So you can see it made the product category code pretty, but it didn't do anything with the description. I can manually change that, so I'm going to right click, and I'm going to choose column text, and I can simply type product category description. And now I have changed that. Now I'm building this. I am the owner of this application. So I am setting this current layout. And being the owner of the default layout means that I need to save what I'm building for however I have my screen designed and whatever I'm using for titles or whatever I want to do with this component. So I want to build this because this is the presentation that will come to the user. Now you can allow them to build their own layouts that are customized, but you are setting this default layout as the initial builder of this. So you want to save the layout once you get it pretty on here, whether I want to give them groups or locking or column widths and footers, word wrap. You can do all of that as that developer. This is pretty simple. I'm going to go on ahead and close this. So with that, that's building a simple grid. Let's go on, and now let's take a look at building an actual process grid. And we are going to build an order update utility. So again, I am going to come up to a new component, and instead of a grid, I'm going to choose a process grid. And I would use this because I want to do transactions against the data that I'm doing here. So I am going to call this an order update utility. And this is going to update open orders in my system, whatever description you would like. This is something I may put on the menu here. So I am going to maybe find, this is an icon here, it's got a pencil, could stand for editing. So I'm going to choose this icon, and that was what will display when I add it to my menu. I'm going to click OK. So my first place it takes me is my settings. One thing you're going to notice, though, is this is a process grid. So I have some different options of how I'm going to set this up. I do have my filter options, which are the same. How do I want to filter? Do I want it to hide? But I have a new button here called Transaction Execution Style, because a process grid is used to transact data. And here, I can decide, do I want the user to execute the transactions when they push a button on the checked rows? Do I want it to be on all rows? So just process everything that's in here. Do I want to do the current row on a field change or when the row changes? You decide as that developer. I'm going to build an update. So they may only want to update certain individual lines. I'm going to leave this as the default execute checked rows. I'm going to click on appearance, and you'll notice that I have some more options here in my appearance. Not only do I have these two that were there for a simple grid, but I also have a show transactional status column. If you've ever noticed in some of the agility grids, when you do process a transaction, it puts a little green check mark to the left of the box. That is what this turns on. So I'm going to check the box that says, show me a transactional status column. Do I want to display the non-edit columns in gray, and do I want to draw a border around the edit columns? We'll come back and take a look at those and turn those on so you can see how they behave. Now I have my behavior tab. Do I want to prevent the user from sorting? Do I want to expand my groups? These were things that were there, but I have some extra ones here. Do I want to include a data import process? We are going to build a data import process in the next one. So right now I'm going to leave this unchecked. And it is a process grid, so I have to set it into edit mode. And do I want it always on, or do I want want to have to turn it on to do that? how do I want to select my data? Do I want it to just do it naturally? Do I want to select it with a single click? When the row changes, a checkbox without function to row. So you get to decide, and I would just kind of play with those and see how they work for you and what you want. Again, I have the style, refresh, banners, item code I can feed. Here I'm going to click next, and I'm going to go into my SQL statement. So this is going to be an order update utility. I want to give the user the ability to update a PO or change a PO, maybe to update the ship via code, to add some shipping instructions, and then to maybe change a location. So maybe I don't have enough in this location and I want to ship it from a different one, so I'm going to change the location code here. So I need to add my order header and I need to add my order line. So I am going to come over here and I'm going to turn off my SQL expression builder. And I'm going to find my OEORDHDR. Now, a lot of times you may want to use the view. We put a lot of, if you see the field or the table name with the WV, that stands for WiSys view. We would recommend that you actually use the WiSys view when you're building things to display. Our views generally are all completely standard and they're reading what's in the table. It protects you if anything should change in Macola. If you're using the view, we can take care of it behind the view. Because I'm going to do an actual data update, I want to see what's really in the table and I want to see exactly what's there. So I'm going to use the actual SQL table in this instance. So I'm going to add my order header. And then I want to take a look at the order line because I want to update the location that's on the order line. So I'm going to pull both of these tables over here. And whoops, I just made it fall off, which was really silly. So I'm going to double click it and it put it back here. And I can, of course, take a look at what's in my tables. You can see here, I can expand, see if I can get this right on here so I can see the table names a little bit better. And then I need to join these tables. Just like I would in Crystal or SQL Management Studio, whatever that is. So I have my order type and order number as my index field, and I'm just going to highlight this, and I could drag it across here, and it's telling it to join them on those field names. And again, if I know my SQL, I can type it in. I can also do right clicks here, do left joins, right joins, everything from one table or another. So it's real easy to do here. In this interface here also. Once I have my data, I'm going to click next. And I'm not going to build a filter field here. So I'm going to go on ahead and click next. And now I'm going to get to my buttons. So what I want to do is I want to be able to edit some fields, the ones I said, and then I need to click a button and have the user tell those things to update. So I am going to say add a button. And I can move my buttons up and down. And again, this looks a little different in 565 and earlier buttons because those update buttons or the up and down arrows are over here. One thing that's different with 566 is you'll notice that I also have a ribbon bar across the top. So I can actually build, instead of putting buttons at the bottom, I can build things that look like ribbon bars at the top. And we took a look at that a little bit in the intro. We'll probably expand that a little bit more in some future sessions. So I'm going to leave it as on the bottom here. I'm going to click plus, and this is going to add my button, and then over here are my button properties. I am going to do an agility component is when I am looking at something that's already built in agility. I can do plugins. I can call Macola ES applications. So in 566, we have the new POP consoles and the OE consoles. And in those on the ribbon bar, you'll see that we are calling Macola ES applications if you are ES or M10, and we're opening those applications up right from WiSys. So you don't have to go into Macola to do things like add orders or post or report production or things like that if there's only a Macola application for it. In this instance, I am going to do a transactional report type activity because I want to update some records. So I'm going to choose transaction report, and that's going to change my properties here, my button properties here. And now I can add in here a caption. What do I want my button to say to the user? I'm just going to make it say update. I can add an image if I want an image. If I don't want the text and I just want an image, I can check that box. Button hint. What do I want to tell the user if they hover over it? Update OE order information. I can have enable and disable rules for this button. So potentially here, maybe I don't want them to be able to update 9 records. Now I could filter those out in my SQL, or I can disable my buttons right here and say that if I want to disable and define this, I want to be able to say that if it is a status 9 or whatever, don't make this button hot. So I have the ability to do those. I can come down here, and once I do a transaction, do I want to auto refresh the data? I don't in this instance, because I want you to see the little green check box that says the transaction happened. If I auto refresh the data, I can't see that happen. So I'm going to leave that unchecked. But if I do, where do I want my focus to go back to? So I have options here. I can give them a pre-transaction message. Are you sure you want to do this? I can simply code something like add in a post-transaction message. This was done. Here's how many records were updated. That's all up to you. I always want to try to give them a post-transaction failed message. So this is one I would recommend, that on the post-transaction failed message, if they do get an error, you want the system to be able to tell them what that error is. So I would always come in here. I would just type in error and have the error message here. If you don't have this here, they'll get an error message and it will just pop up an empty box, and it's not going to tell them what that error message is. So you need to code that in. There's times you might not want it there, but so you control that. Do I want the process rows to remove? This button execution style is very important, and this button execution style is new into 566. So you won't see this in the earlier versions here. It's just defaulted to checked rows. But in here, you have the ability to choose checked rows or focused rows. And why that's important to you is when you get your grid there, if you have focused rows only, you will only do the transaction on the row that has focus on. And so the button will only activate on that focused row. If you want them to be able to check multiple rows, then you need to have checked rows only, and that button will not activate until they start checking rows. So I'm going to leave this as checked rows only, and I'll point that out to you when we take a look at our button here. So you can set some formatting, some close options. I'm going to come down here to the transaction definition. And this is where I actually define what it is that this button is going to do when I push it as a user here. So this is where I have defaults here. I can design forms. I can add form fields that might pop up a form for a question. I can add startup queries here. So if I need to maybe go pull some setting values so that I can make this act differently based upon those, I could do a data query to go grab those setting values inside of WiSys or WiSys setup or somewhere else potentially, and add startup queries to get those values and pull them in here before I need that. I can add header transactions so it does it once in the beginning. I'm going to write an order update, so I want it to update each line as it's going through, so I need it to do the detailed records of each line. I could add something to the footer here, and that would be, I want something to happen at the end, like maybe I wanted to print the crystal report at the very end of everything that they just did. And then I can have hosted views where maybe I want to display another view for them of some additional data. Like I said, in this instance, I'm going to go to my detail section, and these are the types of transactions that I can add. So I can add SQL scripts, I can do stored procedure, a crystal nice label, and I can also build in an if then else statement. So maybe I need some special criteria to happen based upon some of the data that's there of what it does. In this instance, I'm going to do an add transaction. And this is going to show you all of the pre-built transactions that WiSys has built that allows you to transact data and make sure that you're following all the Macola rules. So behind the code, it will do exactly what Macola needs it to do to do the type of transaction, and you just need to set this up and feed it the data for what the transactions need to be. So in this instance, I want to update the order headers and order lines. So you'll notice with these transactions here that I can do different types of accounts payable or accounts receivable transactions. I have some batch information that's kind of some new stuff. Here I can see there's the inventory bin layers that I can create or adjust. There's inventory in transit to create or delete. Here there's inventory ones where I want to delete items, add items, update items, and then we're going to come down to the order entry. So these are all the different types of order entry business transactions that WiSys has pre-built out there for you to use. And in here, I am going to choose, you can see there's an order header create. We're going to use that in our imports, but there's an order header change. So I want to update an existing order and I'm going to change it. So I'm going to select the order header change. And I said that in here, I want to allow them to update the PO, the ship via, the instructions, and the location. So when I add my order header change, I have a section with my method parameters. Method parameters are required data. So there always has to be values in a method parameter. And they always need to be set up. Object parameters are sometimes required, but generally they are optional and you can feed them different data. So with my method parameters here, I need to tell this transaction what's important and how to use this information to update my record. I need to know the order number. So I have to have the order number here, and I'm going to come over here to my values, and I need to tell it where do I get that order information. So here I'm going to select my down arrow, and I'm going to say view because it's in my SQL view where I have the order header and the order table. And if I look at the columns, these are all the fields that are in my order header and my order line. So I'm going to scroll down here to find my order number. That's how it's going to know which order number to look at that's displaying in my grid. I also always have, or generally have, a return error message here. And I need to feed it the return value of the error message. Now I'm going to take a look at my object properties. And in my object properties, these are all the things that I can update and change on an order header. So you can see I have my OEPO. I have a username. I have my build to information. I have user-defined fields, extra fields, everything that's pertinent here to an order header. Now, most of the time you're going to have a username because we're always writing to the audit trails. We follow the Macola rules, and we're going to write to the audit trails if you have them on, and we are going to update it with the username. We want to know who did it. And so I simply can come in here and I can choose default of the current user. Now you can hard code it, you could put something else in there, but generally people always want that current user so they know who did it. I am going to update the OEPO. So what's displayed on there, I want it to update that OEPO, and I need to tell it where to get that information. I want to look to the view, and I'm going to find my OEPO. So OE, did I pass it here? Yep, OEPO number. I also want to update my ship instructions, which are right here. What field are those in the table? So I'm going to choose my view again, and I need to come down here and find my ship instruction. And if I want to do both of them, I would need to find both fields because they're stored in two different fields. And then I want to update my ship via right here. And then also I want to update my location field. So let's scroll down here and find, well, this is my order change here. So I don't have a location field in the order header. So what I want to do, I have the manufacturer location, but it's more important on the order header and line that I'm changing the line. So I need to add another business transaction. So I'm going to come over here to detail. I'm going to right click, add a transaction, and now I am going to find my OE. Chances are good it starts with order here. Now I can filter by any of these top things, and I want the order line change. So I'm going to choose order line change. And again, I have my method parameters. I need to fill in the values for my method parameters. I need to know the order type. And I can actually type in, start typing in here, and it will generally find it. I need to know the order number. I need to know the line number. I could have the same item on there multiple times. So it could be that I need to get the, actually, I believe I need the line sequence number. Right here. So I want to feed the line sequence number. It wants to know the quantity to ship. I could be making a change there. I'm not going to be, but I could be. I want to know the quantity to ship. And then again, I have the return error message. So I'm going to set that to my error message here. And then I'm going to come to the object properties. So here are the things that I can change with the business transaction on the order line. So you can see here the different things that you can change: the description, the location, the cost, price, whatever that happens to be. In this instance, I'm going to choose location, and I'm going to choose view, and I'm going to get that from my SQL view. So I need to find location, know my alphabet so I know when to stop. Choose location here. So now I have my header change and my line change. I'm going to click save because I have both of the business transactions here. Click save. And this is defining my update button. So I can click next, and it's going to take me to alerts and then detailed link, of which I'm not going to add either one of those, but I'm going to go to my edit fields. I need to open up the fields that are going to display in my view so the user can edit those. And I wanted to choose the OE PO number. So I can, double click this, and it's going to pull up the OE PO. Now, by default, it's going to set the strings to just 15 by default. And the OE PO is actually 25 characters. So if I don't change that, and I can find that in my SQL Management Studio, I can see it in my views in my SQL view. It'll show me how big that field is. I want to change this to 25 to make sure that they can actually enter in the total value that it will allow, and they have that ability to do that. So down here, the OEPO, I have a required field. Is this a required field that they always have to enter 100% of the time? I may not always require a PO, and if I don't, I need to turn this off, or I will get a stop that says I'm required and I can't get by you. So you may need to turn this off. You do have the ability to do searches, which we don't want to search on an OEPO field, and you can add validations. So if this were an important field like a location or search or something like that, you could do validations and you can do searches to make sure that they have the ability to not only scan, but to do a lookup and to make sure that what they're entering is correct. So I added the OEPO. I am going to come down here and I'm going to add the ship via code. And I happen to know that that just is 3. So I'm going to make this 3. And this is required, so I'm going to leave it required. Ship instructions. So down here, I'm going to add my ship instructions 1 and 2. Those are actually 40 characters. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to make this 40 on both of those. They're not necessarily required. So on both of these, I want to uncheck this box and not have it be required. I don't need a search. I don't need a validation. Here in the ship instructions, not required. I don't need a search. I don't need a validation. I might need up here on my ship via code, it is required, and I may want to search. So I'm going to add in my search area here, I'm going to choose to find, and I'm going to do a lookup here. And first off, we put out a lot of canned searches here. And as a general rule, those are in the Agility search project. So you can do a couple of filters. If you want to see just what's in the Agility searches, you could start to filter by typing AG and it would start bringing in searches. Or I could type search and it would pull up a search project because we also have web searches here. We also try to stay with the same kind of format. So I can type in AD, it's going to do the module of that name. And I could type in this instance, this is going to be a ship via, and it's probably an AR ship via. So it is going to be the AR if I start typing here. If I filter here for AG, you can see it filters down my project to Agility searches or web searches. Or, of course, I can type in AR and then ship via, and it takes me that. It's going to follow wherever that module or whatever that application is set up in Macola. So I will have a search now on my ship via. I'm going to click OK. I can also do a validation. Lots of times we have pre-built validations, or you can build your own. I'm not going to have one on here, but if I did, I could simply take a look here. And I have customer validations, alternate address validations. Those are all out here and available to use. So we'll use those in the next step. So I have these all built. Now I need to add the location because I want to update the location. So let's go find the location. And right here, I'm going to add location. The location field is 3. So I'm going to come over here and default this to 3. No reason to let them even think they can enter more, even accidentally. I want to add a search. So with this location, I'm going to define a search. And I am going to type in my IM-item. And I can see that I have an IM item location. Now I could filter by bin, by serial lot. I can look up locations in various different ways, and there's descriptions here to help me pick which ones I want. I just want a straight item location lookup. Now I need to know what field do I look up, and how do I know which one to take a look at and go on. So this is my item number, and I need to go to the view, and this is my SQL view. And I want to take a look at the item number. So I need to feed it the item number, so it needs to know what location to go look up for that item number. I'm going to feed it the item number. Now, it could be that you're validating whatever they type. In this instance, I'm going to feed it the location for the item so it knows what location. I'm going to add a validation on this also. So I'm going to click in the validation here and choose define. And I'm going to do a lookup. And in here, I'm going to, I can scroll through, try to find them, look them up. I am going to type in my IM loc file so I can see that there is a location validation. And with that location, it needs to know what is my parameter, what is the field. I want it to look at what they type in here, so I'm going to leave this field input. And if it's not a valid location, so these are built with data queries, and it's going to say, go look up this location for this item and tell me if it's valid here or is this a location. So I'm going to type an error message. What do I want it to say if it's not valid? I'm just going to say this location is not found, and whatever I want it to say to the user. And I click OK. And now I have a validation on that. That is the end of building. I'm going to click OK, or I could click apply and it would save and leave me here. I'm going to click OK, and it's going to close this. I am going to come up here to my order update table, and I am going to just right click and choose preview. And with the preview here, I'm going to see all of the SQL data here that I asked for in my SQL query. The headings are going to be whatever the SQL headings are, but I can very easily clean that up by going to display, format, and I can choose mass format. If they are long titles, I can come over here to word wrap, main grid, and it will double space them or wrap them around as I need to. So in my main grid here, it just got rid of all the fields that we didn't think were basic fields that people would want to see. It may be that I don't want to see apply to. I can right click, I can hide this column, and I don't want to care about this one, so I'm going to hide this column. So one thing that I can tell about edit fields is that they're bold. So this is bold, and I'm going to edit the OEPO. If I scroll over here, I can see here's my ship via code, and maybe I want this right next to everything I'm going to edit. So I can simply keep pulling this over here, and I'm going to put it right next to here, so they're all together. This is however you want to move these around. Here I have my location field. Now, one of the things I can do too is I can right click and I can say hide this, and then I can choose it later if I want to. It's however you like to do your editing. So I'm going to put my location here, and you're going to notice that I have a lot of extra fields here, and I can just simply hide those, get rid of those, whatever is convenient for me. My ship via instructions aren't here. So I'm going to right click because it hid them, and I'm going to choose column chooser. And that's going to bring up all the hidden columns that are in my SQL script, but not on my screen. I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to find the ship instructions, and I'm going to add them in here. Okay. And I'm going to close this when I'm done. And again, these are bold, these are not. I changed the layout, I changed the presentation. This is what I want my users to see. I need to save, so it saves this default layout. So I'm going to choose save. Works the same in 565. The screen looks just a little bit different. So I have saved this. I'm going to close this now. And I'm going to go back in. I'm going to double click it, which is just going to take me into edit mode, or I could right click and choose edit. And I'm going to come over here to appearance. And I can say display non-edit columns as gray. I'm going to check that box, click OK. And then I'm going to preview it. And now you're going to notice that not only are they bold, but they're brighter and everything else is grayed out. So that's one way I can make it easier for users to tell this is an edit field. You don't have to do that, you just can. I'm going to edit again. And these are things you'll start noticing now in our existing grid. And I'm going to come over to appearance, and I'm going to check draw border around editable columns. I'm going to click OK. And now if I go into preview again, now not only is everything gray, I click the button here, it's gray, but I also have blue around the columns that are updated. Some people like that, some people don't. It's all up to you and how you define that. So this is now my order update, and you'll notice my update button is not highlighted, and that is because I've told it to be checked rows only, and I don't have any checked rows. I have my filters across the top. I have the ability to group this or whatever it is with my layout, but I want the user to be able to come in here, and I'm going to say change item 84, whatever that item is. I probably should have put my item over here where I could see it better. There's my item number. Let's drag this over here just so I can tell which one I'm updating. Keep going. Okay, let me add my item number. So I am going to, oops, what'd I do? Grab the wrong field. I did, didn't I? So here's my item number. I want to come in here and I want to update these instructions. So I can simply type updated ship instructions. Potentially here, I'm going to change this, and I want it to be California. I don't happen to have enough in MA, so I'm going to make it CA. And let's make this a little bit bigger. Save that so it stays that way. So I've changed this. I could change whatever my ship V is. You'll notice I have a search because I built a search on there. So this is the list of my searches here. And I want this to be UPS ground. Instead, they can scan here, they can enter. I'm going to check the box because this is the row I want to update. I can check as many as I want where I have changes, and I'm going to click update. Whoops, I forgot to turn my audit off here. So this is, you can turn your audit on. Obviously I am in a status 9, so it is not letting me change that. So let me filter to some 1s here. And now let me, so again, we do put some logic there and make you follow the Macola rules also. And those are things that you couldn't change for a location after it's that far in. So I'm going to make this ground, ship instructions, and I'm going to change this to California here. And I could type it or do a lookup. And I have the box checked. Now I could check to automatically select it when I make changes. I did not. I'm going to choose update. And this audit transaction here, while it's thinking here for a minute, is controlled in Agility Explorer. And actually in 566, you can get to it from the designer. But if you go to your file and you go to your options in Agility Explorer, you will see that under transactions, this show transaction trace is what's popping up. So I'm going to turn that off. And I'm going to close this. And there's my transaction trace. So if I was having problems, this tells me exactly what this transaction is doing, and it allows me to troubleshoot. So here I can see that it updated. It gave me the green checkbox. So I know that these values have changed. So if I look at 115 here for this STEM item and I refresh, it'll be California and have these ship instructions. I'm going to choose my refresh button up here. And now it's refreshed. And because the ship instructions are on the header record, you'll notice it changes on every one of these rows because these rows are also showing the line data. And then, of course, it updated the ship via, again, it's on the header, so it has to update all of those. But you'll notice the location is only on the line, and it updated just that particular line for the location. So that's how you can use a process grid. That's how you can use some of our business transactions that are out there to update your Macola tables. So another example might be purchase orders. Maybe you want to update the promise date. You could build something here to update promise dates. I am going to open up, I have another one built. These take a while to do. So I have one kind of pre-built here with an item update. So I created a project here. Here's an item master update. And you can see that here's my settings. I am showing this transactional column here. I have my SQL that says just show me everything in the item master. I don't have any filters, but maybe I want to add a filter by product category or by buyer or something like that. Here is my button to do the update. Let's go look at my edit field. I'm editing the product category, the buyer planner, the user defined field. So I'm doing the exact same thing. And in my button definition, let's come over here quick and go to my transaction definition. And you will see that I have the IAM item master update here. Again, I have method parameters that have to be entered. I have object parameters here that I can feed data to. So that is that one here. And I'm going to close out of that. So there's a lot of different update or types of transactions that you can use there to do those business transactions. So that's our order update utility here. I want to build an OE order import here. So I am back to our Learning Lab project here. And in our Learning Lab project, I'm going to go start another process grid. And this is going to be an OE order import. And I can give it whatever description, picture, any information there. How do I want this? Again, it's a process grid. I have more information here. So my transaction execution, I'm going to import data in this instance from an Excel spreadsheet. And from this Excel spreadsheet, I want all the rows that I'm going to pull in to execute at once. So I'm going to use all executed rows. And then in my appearance here, I'm not going to have these, so they're checked by default, but I don't want anything to gray out here. I'm going to use my transactional status column. And then in the behavior, remember I had additional options, and one of them was include data import process. I am going to check this box. And when I do, you'll notice at the top here, I got another icon, and it would be the same in 565 that says import data, which is going to add another setting setup for me. So I'm going to choose next. And now it's bringing me to the data import service screen. And this can be an import of any Excel sheet, or a CSV file. If you look in the standard out-of-the-box product in Explore or in Agility Explorer, in any of the versions, it's been there, I know, since 561, under order processing, there is already an OE file import. And this comes out of the box. And so you can even take a look at this one here. And this is the same thing. It's going to have an OE order import, and it is pointing to a file that comes by default under your program files, x86, unless your program files, WiSys project folder. And under here, there is this import sales Excel sheet. With this import sales sheet, this is just a sheet. It could have come from an EDI system. It could come from a web page. And you need column headings on here to tell it what they are. They don't have to be used in the import, but those column headings will always need to stay the same for any imports that you're going to do. The data will change, but you're going to set a mapping up to read these values and to know what those are. That's in your existing product today. You can take a look at this to get an idea of how you do this. Today, we are going to create an import orders. So I have an import orders here that this is one that's very similar to the names in Macola. So this is very simple, and it's going to use all the fields that look very similar to what Macola is. So you can have a very complex system, Excel sheet that maybe the data is used, maybe it's not, or you can have something that's very simple and you can feed these orders in. So this is the sheet that I'm going to import. I'm going to go on ahead and close this, and I don't want to save that. So let's go back here to build this import. So my sheet was just order import, and in here I need to add an order import. So I'm going to click add, and I need to browse to that initial sheet that I want to read the mappings off of, and I want to set the table values of what needs to get pulled in. This is the import sheet, import order that I just opened. I'm going to point to that, and what that is going to do is read that Excel file, and it's going to take a look and it will read the first sheet. You can have multiple sheets in there. It will read the sheet name. If I didn't name it, it would say sheet 1 or sheet 2 or load 2, whatever that is. What sheet in the Excel do I want to use? Called order load. I'm going to click OK. Now I need to give my import name a name. I'm going to call this just WS order import or import orders. And now I need to, this is going to create a temporary, it's not temporary, it's permanent. It's going to create a SQL table where it's going to load this Excel information into that table, and it's going to use that to update orders. So what do I want the SQL table name to be inside of SQL Server Manager here, or SQL Server? So in here, I have the one in here for the WS import items. And as soon as I create one, I'll have a WS import orders. So we'll come back to that. So this is WS import orders, and I want my table name to be WS import orders. And then this is the file name where I pointed. This is what it used here. I can set a default location. Where do I want the user to start looking for the files that are here? So where are they going to get dumped? In my instance, the files are going to be under C, program files, WiSys project. So I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to find that particular directory. And this is just telling it where to go to look for the files. It can be anywhere. You can define it on your system where it might get backed up. You can have extra folders where you move the imported files out. It's just setting a default location. If I need to skip some header rows, I can set that number. I don't. It's showing my order load here. It's going to show me it has columns, and the first row is the column names. I have an advanced where it's showing me all the names that were in the spreadsheet. So it will display them as they are, and it will set the values there. and I can go to preview and I can see the data that is in that spreadsheet. When I am ready, the first thing I need to do is create table, and that will go out and create that WS import orders table in my SQL, so it has the place to load it. I can actually tell it to load the data at the same time, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to click create table, and it's going to tell me that WS import orders was created. If I come out here and I look at this after I refresh my data, I would see WS import orders here. So I'm going to just come back up here and refresh. Come on. And then if I scroll back down here, I would see that WS order import tables, and it would be created. So that's what I'm going to use to feed that in, import orders. Okay. So once I have that set up, I'm going to click next, and I need to determine what my SQL is that I am going to use or display for that. So in this instance, I am going to go on ahead and tell it to select everything. Now I could come in here and I'm going to say select everything from the WS import orders table. And when we load that up in that table and we created the table, we added two fields. One is an ID field that will get incremented every time a row is created. And the second one is an is processed, so that we can mark that as soon as you load it into Macola. So I'm going to add a where statement. The WS import orders is processed is null, because when I mark it, it's not going to be null anymore. I typed it. I'm going to choose Format SQL. Going to make it pretty. It's going to show me there's that ID field it added to the value there, and there's my is processed here. Now, in order to be able to mark that as processed, I also need to, I'm going to use a stored procedure that's a standard one that's out there, and I need to tell it what table to go look at. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to add a comma, and I'm going to just set my table name. So I'm going to say WS import orders as table name, which is just telling it what that table name is, where to go look to update that is process. I'm going to click next, and I don't need a filter. I'm going to choose next again, and I'm going to add a button. So the first button that I need to add is to tell it to actually do the import. So over here in my button, I'm going to choose a data import definition, which we defined back here on this setting tab. So I chose data import, and I'm going to give it a button name for the user, and it's going to say import. And I am going to come down here. Maybe I want it to auto refresh after it does it, so then the rows would disappear. I'm going to leave that off at the moment. Actually, I'm going to tell it to auto refresh. And then I need my import definition. And this is going to be the name that you gave it when you were over here in this import data definition. You can see I called it WS import orders. So I'm going to choose that. And that is going to be my import orders button. Now I need two buttons. This is going to pull it into that temporary table, and it's going to have it there. And now I need to tell it to go create orders. Now I'm doing this from a spreadsheet, but if I had a third-party table that I could get to, I could do it straight from a table instead of doing it from a spreadsheet also. But in this instance, I'm doing it from Excel. So I'm going to click add a button, and this time I need to do a transaction because I want to create order header, line, and line record. So I'm going to call this create orders. And this is a transaction, so I'm going to come down here. If it fails, I want it to tell me why as a user. So I'm going to add my error message. And then I'm going to come down here to my transaction definition here. And whoops, that's not what I meant here. So let's just on here. So I am going to come over here to maintenance, And over here in maintenance, I'm going to go to my detail record. Now, in this spreadsheet, I have different line items for the same customer. And I want to add an order. I just want to add one order for every customer. I don't want an order for every single line. So I need to build in some logic that says, if this is the same customer, just add another line. So if it's the first time I see it, create a header and create a line. If it's the second time for the same customer, just add a line. So in order to do that, I need to build some logic in there. And I'm going to use an if then else statement to build that logic in and do that for me. So I'm simply going to right click on my detailed section here, and I am going to say add an if then else statement. And in here, this is the logic of start new order. And then I'm going to come down here, and if click add, and I want to look at my view here, and I want to say if the customer number changes, then it's going to be a true statement. So if you'll look and I expand this, I have a true, and then I have an else statement. So if the customer number changes, I want to do this. And the first thing I'm going to do is add my transaction. I am going to do my OE order header create. And with my OE order header create, I have to fill in my method parameters. So I'm going to go to my view, and I'm going to find my, here, with my order number here. In this instance, on my order number, I'm just going to leave it as a default, and I'm just going to leave it as the entered value here. So because it's going to be whatever it creates. So I'm going to have my customer number here, and I need to tell it in my SQL view where to get the customer number that it fed in that table. If I have a ship to code, I need to again tell it where my ship to code is. So I could add some logic. Maybe it needs to change by my customer and my ship to code or alternate address code. My order date, what order date am I using? In my Excel sheet, I could have an order date, and I could use the view, and I could point to that order date, and I could let Excel control that. So if I point to view and I look at that Excel, it can control that. I can also just set it to a default, and I can have a moving date. So it will just read whatever I tell it here, which will be like the system date, and I could say add a date plus, add a date minus, whatever that date is. You have control of that. In this instance, I do have an order date in my Excel sheet, so I'm going to have it use the order date. And then here's my return order number. So this is going to go create a header record, and I need to get that order number that created back so I can use it to keep creating lines and to create the line record. So give me the return value and give me the order number that you created. Here's my return error message, return value error message, and then I'm going to come over here to the object properties. If there is stuff in the object properties that I need to tell it to use, I'm going to come in here and tell it which fields that it needs to use that might be extra. So it's going to read those fields. And again, I'm going to write to my audit trail, so I always want to populate my username. So I'm going to use the default current user. If I want to get the OEPO, I'm going to use that from my Excel spreadsheet, which is my order PO. And if I want to have, I think I have a bill to name in there. So now if I don't have a bill to name, it's going to do whatever the order number, what is ever set up on that account. I could be overwriting this and typing this in the same as you would do in Macola. So if I had a header comment or any extra fields again, I could do those. I'm going to come down here and I have a ship via. How is this supposed to get shipped out? This is in my Excel spreadsheet. So I need to go find what I want to set that to. If I didn't have it, it's going to use the default on the customer account. I don't remember if I had terms codes. Let's see. I don't see term codes. I could go open up the spreadsheet, but ship instructions, I do have ship instructions in here. So I just have one. I need to feed that in. And again, it's going to use the default unless I happen to override that. So any of these things I could use and feed in here to create this order header. I have that done. And now I need to create the order line. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to right click. If this is the first record, I need to add my OE order line create. So OE order line create. And here I am going to, again, fill in my method parameters. And I added the order line information here. So I am going to choose my item number. And I'm going to choose the location that is in the spreadsheet. And I can also just type in the field here, and it will find the first value, which unfortunately, I don't have a location in here. I'm going to actually, I'm not setting it by the view. I am going to say user entered, and actually I'm going to say default. And it's an entered value, and I am just going to type MA. Now, you could point to the spreadsheet if you wanted to, or you can hard code it just like I did. So what is the quantity ordered? And the quantity to ship is just simply going to be in here as my default. So I'm going to default my quantity to ship in here. My price, now with my price here, I don't remember if I have an item price in here. Let's take a look. I don't think I have an item price in here. So what I can do with my item price is I can set it to default, and it could be in my spreadsheet, but I can set it to a -1. So with a -1, it's saying go pull the price from the system. And I'm going to do the same thing with the cost here. So I'm going to set it to default. And I'm going to set it to a -1, which tells it to go pull it from the system. If I have a request date, I do, whoops, I don't want default, I want view. And I'm going to go pull my ship date for my request date. And again, this is however you define it. So you could make it say request date or ship date. If I want to have my promise date is going to be the same as a ship date, but you could have different dates. Or I could say, today +3 or whatever that happens to be. And same thing with my requested ship date. So if I need to track that, I have that option to track that also and have multiple dates or set that however. I can skip a price recalc if I'm getting an error. I want to see what that error is, so I need to feed it the return error message. So with this instance, it's a new customer. First time it found that order number, create the header, create the line. If I come in here and it tests to see if this is a new customer and it's not, it's going to do the else statement. So in the else statement, all I'm going to do is add another line. So I'm going to add the business transaction, and I want OE order line. And here's my line create. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did up here. And this is just like quick lickety split, right? It does take time though. I'm going to set this to a default, and I want it to be MA, and I want my quantity ordered from my table, and I'm just going to have this default, and my price is going to default with a -1, and the same with my cost. And remember, if it's a method parameter, it has to have something. If you are doing something here and you're not sure what goes in there, by all means, email support, and we will get somebody to call you back and help you with how these work. So view, ship date, view, ship date. My recalc is just going to be true. I don't think I forgot to set that last time, didn't I? I'm going to use default of true, so go recalc it. and then my return error message. So again, as I'm doing this, it's like, oh, I don't think I set this up here. So I'm going to go back up here and check it. And I did not set it. So I am going to default that to true to do a recalc. And that should be everything that I have here. Whoops. And I was just going to make sure I had everything entered. And then I am going to come over here to on my line. Now, I also didn't go into, I'm going to come up here on my order line create here, and I need to go over to my object properties. So in my object properties here, I need to set the order number for that line. So over here, I'm going to go to variable, because in my order header, I created the order number. And now it's a variable that's sitting out there, and I want to get that variable. So there's a couple ways I can get to it. I can click on my search, and I can see that the order header here, create, is going to return the order number used. And I can choose this here as a variable. I also could have just clicked in the box here, and I can get a list here, which is a little shorter, but whatever you prefer. Return order number used, same thing here. Now I need to come through in here on my particular object properties, and these are all the things that I can add to and create. Now I did have an item description in here, and I did have a unit of measure, so I can override it. It will pull from the system, or I can actually come in here and I can override it and use the item description that's on here. I had a unit of measure, so the same thing in my Excel sheet. I can find the unit of measure. And so those are things that are optional for me to populate as a user. Let's see, I don't think I had anything else, so that would complete that. And then I need to make sure I do it down here on my other one. So this time I am going to go on ahead and I'm going to say variable. And if I hit my down arrow, return to order number used. And let's see, I don't think I could come in here and grab my description. And I'm going to grab my unit of measure. And my user, I think I missed that on the last one. So you can see a lot of times, and this is live, guys, I'm doing this as we go here. I want to do default, and I'm going to do current user. And I forgot that up here. So up here in my order line create, I need to come down here and make sure I get my user in here so that it writes properly to the person doing the transaction, so I know. If I need to go back to that, let's see. That should be everything, and I'm going to go on ahead and click save. So I now have my import and I have my create orders here, and I'm going to go on ahead and click OK. I don't need alerts. I could have alerts. Maybe I want to check for duplicates. I'll show you that on our quick item import. We're going way over with a lot of material. So here's my OE order import, and I'm going to choose preview. It's going to show me my SQL, which was actually saying show me everything that's sitting in my temporary table. So this is my SQL, and I don't have anything in here because it said show me only data where that is processed as null. So the first step I need to do is I need to do an import. And it's going to say, okay, tell me where to find the file to import. And I'm going to choose import orders. And I'm going to click OK. And it's going to tell me it found 11 rows. Now I could click audit, which is the same thing as your transaction trace. That's what it's showing you, but I don't have that turned on. I'm going to click close. And here are the 11 records. If I look at the Excel spreadsheet, this is exactly what it looks like, only it has an ID row and it has an is process row. And remember, I aliased the table name here. So I can make this pretty. I can make this whatever the value is for the column here. These are now sitting in this WS process table. If I came over here to my WS import orders and I looked at that table here, you would see that in my WS import orders, I now have the same values here sitting in this table. So when I have everything that I need here, I simply click create orders. And it is now going to go out here and it will add all of these orders. So it should create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 orders here. So here it came back and it checked the box, which told me that it has processed. If I go out here and I look in my order entry and I look at my order status, and I'm going to go on ahead and say these are all just booked orders. So I'm going to do my initial filter here. And I'm going to sort them by my order date here. And these should be, if I scroll up here, here are my booked orders. This is the date I had on my orders here. So if I take a look here, I can see that this is my customer here. I think they should be here. I don't know what I had in there for order dates here. So anyhow, these would be my orders here and they would pull them right into my order status. So it is that simple to create an order import. I do have a project out here already where I have the same thing, that I have created an item import doing basically the exact same thing. So I have a spreadsheet out there with an item import. I created an item import off of a process grid, and I have my data import. This is where I define the data import, reading the Excel sheet. Here I have a little bit more criteria here because I also have this checking against the item master to see if that item already exists in there. So this is has a left join on it. So against the import, because I can check for the item number. The item number in whatever system I'm pulling this from, so it could be a CAD system, wherever that happens to be, I can check and make sure I'm not using that same item number. And this is then going to allow me to build an alert to tell me that it already exists. So I don't have any filters. I have an import, just like we built for customers. I have a create items, just like we built. This is different here. I have a delete unprocessed. So this is actually a SQL process where I just say, go delete from this table all of the unprocessed in case I need to dump that. And here I have an alert built. It's doing a duplicate check so that if the item number, a duplicate check in the SQL you can see back here says, if the import item number equals the item master item number, then show me that it's a duplicate. I'm going to click OK here, and I'm going to click this off here, and I'm going to do a preview on my item import here. And I'm going to choose import, and I'm going to browse to an item import sheet. And I happen to have an item import here already built in Excel. And I'm going to close that. And this is what it looks like. It has item number, the description, product category, everything that's required for an item import is set in this table. Has the table name. And you can see I got an alert here for STEM. STEM already exists. I'm using the bikes demo database here. If I try to create items right now, I'm going to get an error. And it says, you got a duplicate. You can't do that. So I'm going to click OK. And in this instance, I could say just do checked rows only. And this does fail. It's all or none. So none of these have imported, even though this check mark says they did. It did not get finished. So in this particular instance, I'm going to refresh this grid here. And I want to delete these because I need to get this stem out of here. Or I could create a button where maybe I just delete this row. I have delete unprocessed. So if I come in here and I'm going to look at this WS import items, which is my table name, I can see here's where I imported them previously. And this is processed is true, and these are null. So if I tell it to delete them, it's going to get rid of all of these, and there's going to be nothing in my table. And if I refresh, then my is processed is now empty here. So that is now all gone here. So I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to do an import again. I happen to have another Excel spreadsheet out there that doesn't have the stem in it. Now, you would create a box that says, just delete this row and get this out of the WS import table, something like that. So I'm going to do a no stem, and I'm going to click OK. This time I only have 3. So now if I do an import here, and you can see this is item number new A123 blah blah AB. So I'm going to click import. It's going to, whoops, I didn't mean to click import, silly me. I'm going to close this. I'm going to choose create items, and it's going to go out here and it's going to create items. And of course, if I refresh this, you'll see that these items are in here and the in process is marked true. If I go over into Agility Explorer, those items are going to be in my item manager. So in my item manager here, if I come in here and look at my inventory list here, I don't want the bin master, just give me an inventory master list. But again, you can see these were built the exact same way. So here is my new, there's my B67893, there's my A234, and I could search for the others. So I just pulled those into my inventory item master. Very easy to do. Okay, so let's go back to our PowerPoint here. And basically, I went ahead and this talks about how do you find, we talked about this in the intro, how do you find the components by using the view all agility component. How can you move them? So if you create them, number one, in a test company, you can, this tells you how to move them. I left these in here from before, just as a reminder. How do I get them into my live stuff? So I can create them in a test database, move them into a live. We also have a lot of Agility Design Studio training that's already out there in our quick links. You know, please go check those out. They are older. They do need redone. There's some stuff in there that has changed a little bit, but it gives you the general overall, and most of it is kind of the same. It just looks different or has been moved around. So I want to thank you. I know this was a bit of a lengthy conversation. Thanks for joining us. Again, as I said, we will be sending out this recording. If you would like this sample project, email me, krussell@wisys.com, and I would be happy to send this to you. Let me know if you have any questions. I think when I close this, this is going to give you a short 4-question input survey. I would love some feedback from you. What else would you like to see? We are doing a design studio series, so by all means, give me some suggestions. What would you like to see build? Would you like to see other components? Are there types of transactions? Is there something that you would like to see built? So go on ahead and give me some ideas there. So now let me come over here and I'm going to take a look and see what we have for questions here really quick. And I don't have any questions. That, I don't know if that's good or bad, but oh wait, I have a question here. Can you change from a grid to a process grid? No. At this time, if you created one or the other, you can't switch them and create it as a grid and then turn around and switch it to a process grid. So if you think you might do transactional type activities against it, just create it as a process grid. It's not going to hurt if you don't put any buttons or anything on there. Can you delete the temp file and start over? Yes, you can delete the temp file and start over, which we did in there. So I did delete that temp file. You could also do it one at a time and, you know, have a button there that just did the checked rows and deleted a row if it showed that it was a duplicate. You could also do an import where you didn't import everything at once. You could make them check all the boxes. You know, that's just kind of a user defined. You have that ability. So it's an hour and a half afterwards. Again, if you have any questions, shoot me an email. If you think of anything later, I would love to know what you would like to see. So watch for our next Design Studio series. And we're just going to keep building and building on this and as grow and look at this as we do this. So any feedback is appreciated. Thank you for joining me today. And that's basically, oh, hold on here. We have another late question. Does Agility Design Studio, hold on here, I'm having a hard time reading this. Let me see if I undock it. This one here. Does Agility Design Studio provide functionality that is not available in the WiSys SDK? No, if you have the WiSys SDK, pretty much all the business transactions that we're doing, you can do with the SDK. So the difference of Design Studio is you get Design Studio when you buy Agility Explorer. It's part of your system manager. It's part of the purchase. You already have that. If a user can do Crystal reports, many times they're quite capable of doing, the Design Studio. It's just kind of playing around and getting to know it. If they've done Access or Crystal or they understand the tables, they can do this. If you're using the SDK, you have to have some other third-party application, .NET or what have you, something like that, and you have to have that SDK there. So it often requires a developer or an additional person. Design Studio here with this tool is basically designed to let anybody do this and you control this so that you don't have to have a developer on staff. You just kind of have to have somebody that's comfortable with the tables or building report type things. So it does do pretty much the same thing that you have. So if that's all we have for questions, thanks for joining us again and watch for our next session. Have a good day, everyone.